Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of RIRE One-on-One with Zach Friedland. And today I am really happy to finally be sitting down with the conductor of the Rhode Island Recording Ensemble, joining us from his home in Rhode Island, Dr. Brian Cardany.
Thank you, Zach. Glad to be here. Good to see you.
You too. So, Brian, why don't you just tell us a little bit about how you got into your own musical journey? You're now the Associate Director of Bands at URI,
Right.
but I know there were multiple steps upon the road getting there, so you just wanted to share how you ended up where you are now.
Sure. I started beginning band in 7th grade, actually, intermediate school, on the trumpet. And then I kept going and got more involved into high school, joined the jazz band in 8th grade, and played in every ensemble I could. And then I got to wanted to go to college. I'm like, I just like to play the trumpet. I'm not sure what I want to do in my life. I thought about being an engineer, an English major, whatever. So, but I decided that being a music ed major might be just a really smart thing to do. So I went to James Madison University and was a music ed major and got more and more into it. It was like music camp for 4 years. It was kind of fun, I thought, and did my student teaching, and I really kind of dug the teaching thing. I'm like, okay, maybe I won't go to grad school. Maybe I'll actually teach. So I went out and taught a couple years in rural Virginia, Page County, Virginia. Then ended up teaching a few more years in Maryland, right outside of DC, but actually in the same county where I grew up, Montgomery County, Maryland. And then I got to this point, I was the assistant director at a high school. I was like, it's just time to move on, do something else. So I decided to go get my master's, ended up at Arizona State with an assistantship with the band program. The band director at the time, Bob Fleming, was about to retire, and we had gotten a good relationship going. So he said, hey, why don't you stay here for your doctorate? I'm like, okay. And they actually kind of bumped up my assistantship level and everything. So it was actually a really good kind of a win-win thing. So I stayed there for 2 more years, got my doctoral coursework, my DMA in music education at Arizona State. Then got the job at University of Rhode Island in 2002. My one and only job so far. So been doing the same thing since then. Finished my dissertation in 2006, and then just been trying to find all kinds, whatever creative outlets I can. And this is obviously one of them that I really enjoy. So,
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Coach Bob Fleming was a huge name in marching band and our field. And I know you had that really great time working with him at ASU. What were some of the things you really took away from working with him?
He was a great coach, actually. Like his leadership skills, his way, he was so passionate about the people he worked with, all the students and other people. He was very hardworking and disciplined about his work. He was an excellent musician, and he brought a lot of, I think, just high standards to the marching band, which was I think his main first love in a way. He also did the concert band and the wind ensemble there. The wind ensemble at the time at Arizona State was actually the 3rd band. It was like the lower division music majors, mostly freshmen and sophomore music ed majors and performance majors. So it was an excellent group, but that's sort of what he did. And I got, as a teaching assistant, I got to conduct all those groups too, which was great. But I just learned a lot about how to run a program and how to motivate students and how to just, bring some energy and some just real human interaction to the whole thing. He just, if you saw him, I don't know if you ever got to see him do anything or see a video or something.
I did meet him at Kappa Kappa Psi National Convention in 2011.
Right.
Oh yeah, and when we got to talk a little bit, so because he was a national president for a couple years. Yeah.
In fact, when the Kappa Kappa Psi Theta Upsilon at URI was founded, he was the president at the time. He's actually signed the
he signed the charter.
He signed the charter that we have. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's a pretty cool connection there. So.
So in addition to what you do at URI, you are also involved in probably half a dozen other things in the Rhode Island musical community.
Mhm.
And did you just want to talk about a few of those things? One of which, of course, is the American Band. For
Right.
anyone who doesn't know, just tell us a little bit about some of these programs.
Sure. One of the longest ones has been the American Band. I've been playing in it since I got here in 2002, played trumpet and horn, and then I became the assistant conductor in, gosh, I think it was like 2008 or something. I can't remember exactly. And then in 2013, I was very fortunate to be appointed as the conductor and music director of that group. And and we've even worked together in that group as well, which is great. And it's a lot of, it's a really, high-end community ensemble audition group, plays at a high level, and a lot of history because it was founded in 1837, one of the second oldest groups in the, we think it's the second oldest continuing group, community band in the country, right behind the Allentown Band, which was founded like 2 years earlier or something. There's also the South County Chamber Orchestra, which I've been doing since 2010, I think. Every summer, just meets in the summers in Narragansett, but it's a lot of the top string and wind players from the area, the sort of semi-professionals and amateurs that play at a really high level. And we're able to pull off, full symphonies and things in just a few rehearsals, often with people missing because everyone's going on vacation and other festivals going on and things. That's a lot of fun. As a few years ago, I started working with a string group called the South Kingstown Community String Orchestra, which meets in the Neighborhood Guild in Peacedale, part of the South Kingstown Parks and Recreation. So it's really like a course through the Parks and Recreation in this area. And it's a lot of very passionate amateur, maybe 20 to 25 string players. And they, a lot of them have like started late in their life, or maybe played for a while in high school, then put it away for 30 years and then came back to it, or all kinds of variations like that, almost like a New Horizons group, in a lot of ways. But they're really passionate about what they do, and they really love playing, and that's a lot of fun too. And learning the string instruments in a different way with these kind of, maybe they don't always have the technique that some of the other players I work with have. And recently, about a year ago, I was appointed conductor of the Ocean State Pops Orchestra, which is a comparable level to the American Band. And they take pride in putting on very entertaining and high quality concerts. And we had a really successful first season, and now we're just waiting to hopefully get started with the second one. Everybody's sort of just waiting for whenever we can actually meet together in large groups and make something happen. But
and having worked with band for most of your schooling and beginning your career, what was that like, making the transition into now doing orchestra and dealing with the strings?
Right. Yeah, it was a little interesting at first. The first one, I've done orchestras sporadically through my career. Even back my second teaching job, I did one or two pieces here and there. I was actually the assistant conductor of the URI Symphony Orchestra about 12 years ago for a couple of years, and did some pit orchestras and stuff. So I had like little bits of experience, but when I started doing the South County Chamber Orchestra, it was, especially with high-end players, it was like, okay, they really know what they're doing, and I want to make sure I can offer something of use. What I found, though, in some ways, it's just like another instrument to learn, just like I had to learn all the woodwinds and the brass and the percussion, a lot of the percussion in the band world. It's just another family of instruments with certain ways of tone production. A lot of it's just understanding that they have to use the bow in different ways to do things. And I know that there's bowings is a lot of the conversation actually in rehearsals. I find more and more, and even a lot of players even don't even agree what the bowing should be, which gave me some comfort, because I would have an idea what might work, and then they would have another idea, but someone else would go, no, I don't want to do it that way, I want to do it this way. And so then I was like, well, I guess there's a little bit of subjectivity to this in the end anyway, so I'm not going to get the fact that I don't play a string instrument at at a level that I would actually want to play in front of people with. But at least I do kind of understand the fundamental characteristics of how to make sound, and some of the basic ideas of how to use the bow to get different sounds, which I think as a conductor is your main goal. And if there's any specific issues that come up, like a fingering is really awkward or something, usually the players can work that out. I just, more and more I've gotten used to just working with them as just a different set of instruments with just a different mindset. And I think I'm trying to think about it. 90% of the time you're talking about musical things in general. It's only rarely that you're really talking about technical things that are that particular to that instrument. And that's with almost all levels that I've been working with, because so that helps a lot if I think of it as another instrument. I also kind of think of the voice somewhat as that. I would not say I feel super comfortable with directing a choir, but I've been singing with Chorus Westerly for many years, and my wife is involved with that. So I've gotten a lot of ideas about diction and how to do a good tone and stuff. So I kind of think that's like another instrument that if I ever had to work with choirs a lot, I would just have to delve in a little bit more to some of the details of that, and maybe do some more, maybe take some singing lessons or something, but to get more of the terminology. But that's sort of how I think about it, and it seems to work out pretty well.
Let's dive into your approach to score study a little bit, because having worked with you and having played under you a lot, I find one of your best talents is you are great at coming up with descriptive language, and specifically non-musical descriptive language to describe music. And just wondering, specifically, what's that process like when you need to come up with something to describe what you want to hear?
Much of that actually comes sort of spontaneously in the rehearsal. Sometimes it comes up when I'm doing score study. I mean, I have impressions when I learn a piece of music. I do see, an analogy I often use when I talk to younger players, like an honored band or something, is talking about music is sort of like you're acting. You have the melody, which might be the main character, and then you have background characters, and then sometimes the character might change costume by changing character, the style of music or something. So I see music a lot like that. I just see how the parts work together sort of in this dramatic way. And I think that's partly how I see, and I almost always do develop these images in the world, this is like riding a roller coaster. This is like, slamming your brakes on the car really fast, and then, or running through the prairie on a windy day or something. I don't know, this weird images come to my head, but I think most of it's not really planned in what I say in rehearsal. It's just, I think they're just back there somewhere, and I'm okay, how can I describe this feeling I have when I hear this music, or the mindset I am in when I'm thinking about this music? So I don't know.
I think it's so interesting as a composer, because I'm always trying to paint a picture in my mind of what's going on. So it's I don't know if does reading the program notes or reading something about the composer ever kind of change your mind about what you see?
Sure. I mean, when I read the notes, I always try to take that as a foundation to go with. But I don't think I need notes to have an idea about a piece. And a lot of times I find the notes, there's parts of the piece that are actually maybe more nuanced or richer, or maybe more multi-layered than what the composer originally thought. In fact, I mean, a lot of the better pieces, a composer may have, I'm actually surprised at how often composers write pieces and they don't really have a specific idea like that. I mean, it also depends. I mean, I think more and more people, there's a specific purpose to a lot, particularly in the wind band world lately. I mean, there's a lot of pieces out now that have a very specific, this link to a commissioning party, maybe a specific event, something like that. And so there's an emotional aspect to it. But even within that, there's a lot of direct emotional connection to it that's not like based on factual information. It's or the mood may not, you're not really sure what the composer was feeling exactly, even if they say this is reminding me of like a warm sunny day or something. But you're going to have your own thoughts on what that is. And the music might even touch you in a different way depending on who you are and who and everybody in the group. So I certainly always, try to get as much information as possible from the composer. I'm very much in the vein of trying to be the composer advocate, which is a conducting book out there. So I really do try to get inside the piece and think, what is the composer trying to say? And I know in the end, it's really probably my version of what you're trying to say, but I'm hoping it's at least like maybe like, say an author writes a novel and then someone else reads it on a recorded version, books on tape kind of thing, whatever now it's all like streamed probably, but so that how they read it makes it a slightly different version of the story in a way. It can change the way that the nuances of it, and yet the core of it is the same. And I kind of feel like we as conductors are doing something like that. We're interpreting it a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all, and for every performer too, it's all based on personal experience. So,
of course,
yeah,
absolutely.
And I know one thing is, you have this descriptive language, and then, is there any other things that you really take into account when you're doing your score study? Is there?
One thought I've always had is I want to have at least a personal sense of logic about how the piece is put together. And I want to be able to have a reason in mind for basically every note in the score. Like, sometimes it's really obvious, like here's a melody and here's a accompaniment, here's a melody. But sometimes there's like these weird transition sections, or there's just, the composer goes off in a different direction or puts things together in an unusual way. And so it's really understanding kind of how all the mechanics of it work together. And I may guess wrong sometimes, but I always at least make up my own idea of how all these pieces work together to make a greater whole. That's one basic tenet I hang on to when I'm doing score study. So
I think it's the book The Composer's Advocate that says it's your job to figure out how 1,000 inevitable decisions were made.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. Turning a little bit more to rehearsal. I know you direct this wide variety of groups. You have a wide variety all the way from younger players to older players. Does your process change at all? And I know you said about working with coach, how it was about leadership and how to run a program. Do you change your approach a lot, or do you find it's kind of more similar than it is different than when you're with, a middle school honor band versus the American band?
There are differences. Like actually the last group I actually conducted before it all got shut down was a middle school honor band in New York. Excellent players, really strong players, but they're still middle school kids. So there was a certain vibe to that. I've done a couple other middle school groups. I've done some high school groups. And then you're right. I mean, I've worked with adults that are twice my age, as well as people that are half my age at the college level or whatever. I think, and in some ways it's the same, but I think what's different is you need to realize where they're coming from. I mean, I try to be in the shoes of the people I'm working with. Like in the American band, where it's people in their 20s up to people in their 60s and 70s. I know that all of them are highly capable. South County Chamber Orchestra, same thing. I treat them like basically a professional musician as much as possible. And so that means, that I can talk about music. I can use music terminology freely. I can probably pace things a little bit differently. A lot of it's pacing, I think. With less mature players, you need to move even faster. They tend to, and you have to keep things like, when you spending time on something for a while, you have to find a lot of different angles at it. Where with more of a professional level group, or just high end, college group or something, you can spend a little more on specific details, and maybe trust them to understand the big picture a little bit better. So I guess that's, as far as like structuring rehearsal, a lot of it's about pacing and how you keep things moving, or maybe you can linger a little bit more or less depending on their maturity level or their experience level. And then there's the language you use. I think I do, there's certain, I don't go off into stories and things too often, I don't think, but I will say the kinds of things I say, or the way I talk to people might be a little bit different, depending what age they are, particularly age, I would say. Other than that, I think I just try to make the music happen. And Tony Maiello is one of our great wind band conductors out there. And I remember he said something about, like, even when you go in front of like a 6th grade band, you conduct them like they're musicians, I don't know how he phrased it, but it was something like that. And I took that with me, and I say, yes. I think we need to, in the end, we want to try to bring them up to a level, and you need to understand where they're coming from. So it's kind of like, this is where they are, this is where I am, but I think I can get them here if I just, kind of talk to them a little bit on the high end of what their experience level is. But with younger, less experienced people, I will probably use more non-musical allusions and ideas, and some of those images or whatever, where with stronger musicians, we can get right to it. Can we just make that shorter, please? Or, more accent on these notes, or, like, you can get right to the details. So, not very concise answer, but I think that's basically.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to talk about programming, because I know you have given a workshop even at Midwest Clinic about programming. So if you want to kind of tell us a little bit about what that presentation entailed, and just your general approach to how you program, how you think about concerts.
Yeah, it's such a big part of the job. And I'm sure a lot of conductors will say it's one of the things you spend the most time doing, actually, is just choosing what to play. That Midwest Clinic was with a friend and colleague who's at Humboldt State in California. We met at a conference at Midwest, I think, several years beforehand, and we decided to do this joint repertoire study. And the idea we had was using core repertoire as sort of a foundation for your program. And so we went through, this is partly based on like the several studies that have been done to try to find out works of artistic merit for the wind band program. And then we brought in that information. We looked at lists from various states and other organizations, trying to find out what pieces were consistently considered the top end of these. And then we developed our own core list, and we had this sort of just a structure of, like, whatever you want to program, at least maybe have like a system over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, where you have like these core pieces that your students are going to have. And that core list could maybe change over time too. But, for instance, like English Folk Song Suite by Vaughan Williams is something that probably every high school director should have in the mix, so that their students get that before they leave. At least that would be on my list. Things like that, where it's just established quality music that it's sort of like the bread and butter. And then after that, you can program around it, whether it's, whatever, newer music, lighter music, whatever it is. So just making sure they have that real core educational experience, and it's a real art that's kind of proven. Yeah. And for me, I very much program like that. I almost always have a piece or two. I'm like, I really want to do this piece. And now how can I build a program around that? A lot of times too, I will just make like a list of pieces I want to do, and say, okay, I want to do this one. this year, this one, and I said, okay, I have these 3 concerts. I can maybe use this one on this concert, this one, this concert, this one, this concert, and these pieces go here, and this will go here, and well, now I need an opener, so I'll find an opening. Maybe I'll go find a march to open the concert, and maybe another concert. I'm like, we really need something that's slow, so I'll find something that's slow, and I kind of piece it together. But I always start with a combination of core works. I usually go one of these core lists to start, and then also just making lists of things I want to do, or obviously the first thing I do almost every summer before a concert band at URI, for instance, is I'll go through our entire library again, like I do this at least once a year, and just put down pieces I haven't done in a while that I think would be work for them. It'll be 15, 20 pieces. And then maybe I bought 5 or 10 pieces, and then I just start seeing, okay, how can I build a season around these 20 pieces, or how can I pick out maybe half of them and build a season? And I start seeing how pieces might work together. Like a lot of times too is one of those pieces might kind of evoke a theme where like there's one time with the American band we did Blue Shades. We had Blue Shades. I really wanted to do Blue Shades, and then there was a Mackey piece, Hymn to a Blue Hour.
I think I was like on that concert.
Yeah, we did like 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, well, we have a blues theme here, kind of a blues jazz theme. And so then I started finding other pieces to fit that theme. So a lot of times there's sort of like that core that I build from that way.
And one thing I love about the band is there's no other large ensemble that's currently commissioning so much new music.
Absolutely.
So, what's your kind of approach to mixing the old core with just massive influx of new, which just, and stylistically and everything is just so, so diverse.
Yeah, it is. And it's getting hard to keep up almost, because almost every few weeks I see another thing on the CBDNA list about somebody else that's putting together a commission with some other composer I haven't heard of. A lot of times they're like colleagues of theirs in their region or something.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting how many so many composers, and I know our project here with the Rhode Island Recording Ensemble is actually helping to promote that, bring some other people out up into that world. I try to have a mix. I mean, I try to have a little bit of all of it every concert, and if not every concert, certainly every season or every year. I think there should be a steady diet of core masterworks. I think there should be a steady diet of just really good works from any time period. I think there should be a steady diet of newer stuff that I think is quality, that'll last. And I really do try to only program things that I would want to program again. Like I really don't like the idea of doing a piece just for the moment, because it's kind of fun. But if it doesn't have any depth at all in it, or I don't see another purpose for it down the road, I usually try to avoid it. But
so on the subject of the Rhode Island Recording Ensemble,
yep.
This started, this was back in 2013 that we kind of had our first season. I had just graduated from URI. I was looking to kind of bump up my website a little bit, and I needed some new recordings of a lot of my works for band at the time. And so I talked to Brian. I said, how would you feel if we, did this for a weekend? I think back then it was Saturday. It was a Saturday, Sunday. It was an overnight thing. What do you remember about that very first year, and how would you describe the experience of, our first time trying this out?
Honestly, Zach, I don't remember. It's all kind of blurred together.
Yeah.
Of all the different, I mean, if you told me maybe some of the pieces we did or something, I might start.
That first set was Leader of the Band was in that first set.
Right. Okay.
The commencement piece, the High Altitudes commencement piece.
Right. Okay.
I think Someday might have been in that first bunch.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess the broader question would be, how what have you taken away so far about the experience of seeing RIRE evolve for past 6 seasons now.
I think it's really incredible, actually, this germ of an idea you had that's grown into something that's really special, and I think could become even more special. I mean, we've talked about that in meetings and things, but I think we're well on our way. We have a little hiccup with the situation right now, but I mean, it's very, very likely we're going to continue on in January and keep going, you know, years forth. I always had this special feeling. I just love being a part of this like new music that's there, and being able to learn this new music, play it with really good players, and then to make a recording too, to have this sort of archive of this new music that helps the composer and helps the just, I think, the genre. But I just love feel like I'm part of the creative effort, I guess, even though I'm not the creative person. And I really have no interest in being a composer. I kind of feel like I don't have, like, my inspiration really is about learning other people's music and helping to bring that to life. Like, that's my actual inspiration. And that's where I think I have I feel like I can be creative in that endeavor. That's where, like, the rehearsal process and the score study and how do I think about the pieces and things like that and how I program, etc. But for the recording ensemble, just being a part of this little step along the way of bringing a piece to life that may have never been heard before, I think that's just really exciting. And I've had that every time we've done it. I mean, from the very beginning, I already knew some of the pieces we did, you know, because some of these ones we've already done with other groups or something. Your high altitudes I've done every year with the URI commencement band. Ever since, you know, things like that. And it's kind of neat to know that I got to be the one that conducted it the first time, and now it's still, you know, still there. So that's and I have that special feeling every time we get together. So I think that's been pretty steady, and I'm really impressed with your vision for this and the support you've gotten from colleagues you've met along the way, and it's really, really just cool to just have this really special project going on in our little state.
Thank you. And I guess the broader question would be, where do you see the band world and the genre possibly going 10, 20, 50 years from now? Where might you like to see it go?
Yeah, we've certainly hit a new level from back when I was in grad school. Still, I think there was still you know, this thing of like wind ensemble music was just weird, you know, the avant-garde stuff, and you know, but we were still kind of arriving at this point where, like, there's a lot of music coming out, and now I think it's probably many times more than it was 20 years ago when I was in grad school. Like, there's so many composers writing quality music for the genre. In fact, one of my projects this summer, I think, while I'm home much of the time, is to go through and try to learn a bunch of new composers and see what else is out there over the past few years that maybe I kind of slipped through the cracks in my own mind, my experience. But where we're going, that's a really good question. I think in some ways, I think it's fine. What's going on now is really exciting. And you're right, as you said before, that the wind band is probably the most vibrant genre as far as new music and playing
as far as large ensemble, at least.
As far as large ensemble,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, orchestras, I think, are doing more of it than they used to, but still, I mean, if they spend more than 15, 20 minutes on a new piece, that's a big deal. Like, you know, because they have to play that Brahms thing or some concerto or something, you know, they always need to just get people to buy the tickets. And I think maybe partly why the wind ensemble, the band thing, has become so big is because we don't have to sell tickets. Usually it's all educational groups. And the handful that do, actually, we don't. Even like the Marine Band is, you know, is one of our top ensembles that commissions regularly, but they're supported by the federal government, so they're in pretty good shape. And I've rediscovered that they have lots of music online that you can stream for free, and there's a lot of exciting things with that. I think something that may happen, the other person I work with, which is a real kind of at the avant-garde of our field, was Gary Hill at Arizona State, who's really one of the real thinkers of the field, always looking to the future. So I kind of had his whole aspect too, this artistic aspect, which I'm hoping to delve into more myself. And I know one of his big concepts that they actually did there was, instead of having like a wind ensemble as a group, they more like had the whole department was sort of like a pool of players and singers, and they would take projects, and they might do an oratorio, and then they might do an orchestra piece, and then they might do a wind ensemble piece, and then they might do a bunch of chamber pieces. You know, they kind of put things together and mix and match things. And I kind of wonder if maybe the professional world will get there at some point. Maybe the wind ensemble world and the orchestral world will kind of overlap, and maybe the jazz world as well. I mean, we already have, you know, pieces for like jazz band with orchestra and things like that. Maybe all these things will kind of like overlap and intermingle, and we'll have sort of like a collective of sorts, you know, the Boston Symphony Players or something, where but it's also maybe paid singers instead of the Tanglewood Chorus that are all volunteer, and plus, you know, the string players, plus maybe if there's a house jazz band or a wind ensemble, or they kind of just have a pool of players that they pull from. I mean, and big cities could already do something like that pretty easily with all the players. I mean, they could do the Hindemus Symphony for band, and then do a symphonic work with orchestra on the same concert, for instance. And I think it would work really well if someone had the initiative to do something like that.
Yeah, I think one thing is a large amount of band music. It's very, very listenable. It's kind of the thing that, you know, the audience that goes to those orchestra concerts and loves to hear the Beethoven and Bach and Brahms, I think they'd really like band music.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's, I mean, luck. Yeah. So, even a lot of the core works from the past, I'm thinking of like Lincolnshire Posy or the whole suites or something, totally could fit into a concert hall in some of these places right off the bat, besides all the stuff that's been written in the past few decades. So,
do you think we will see professional wind ensembles on a large scale like we see professional orchestras there?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I was actually fortunate to meet Fred Fennell a couple times. And one of the times I was sitting at dinner, and I wasn't really in the conversation. I was at a table like 20 people, but he was right there, and somebody asked him that question.
Yeah.
And he said he just took out a pen, and then on a napkin right there, and put a big dollar sign and just held that up, and it's like, that's the problem. Someone has to support this thing.
Yeah.
And considering how much the orchestras have to struggle much of the time, it's going to take a particular situation and probably a particular few group of people with a lot of money to ever make that happen.
Yeah. But I think it would probably take like $1 million up front just to start the thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it might have to be like a Dallas Wind Symphony that meets 5 times a year, whatever they do. And then finally they figure out a way to maybe have a 30-week season. I think we have enough music to make that happen.
Yeah.
It's just getting the funding.
And, you know, another thing that has kind of crossed my mind with all this social distancing now, do you see technology playing a role in kind of, you know, how the field, especially because band is so tied in with education? And
right.
So do you see that might be a way do you see that changing the field at all?
Wow. It probably will. I know it's become very common to have pieces with electronics, because that's a common way to, Alex Shapiro and Stephen Bryant and others have done that. A lot of pieces for younger groups even. So there's that aspect, which I'm sure will continue to grow. I have a lot of mixed feelings. I mean, like, there's no way that a large ensemble or even a large chamber ensemble can actually perform together. Like, I mean, it's really cool when you see, like, was that the Toronto Symphony put Bolero or something on, and the virtual orchestras and things like that. It's a cool product, but the real creativity is the person that put all those videos together. I mean, all those people individually playing their individual part. I mean, I actually don't enjoy that. And you can't really, you're not really connecting with the other players. So it's a very, I mean, you can do those kinds of things, but that's not really making music. That's, you know, it's producing a musical product from people that are doing music.
It'll
which
never
to
be
me
the
is,
same.
it's just not the same. And I'm not sure in our lifetimes that technology will be able to fix that. And I don't think I want it to be honest. I am actually hoping that I'm all for technology. I'm not scared of it. I use it all the time, but I'm in for this, for the human connection. And I'm a big promoter of acoustic sound, which you can only hear when you're in the room. I'm hoping that this whole situation makes us realize how important that is. So yes, we'll make there'll be software innovations and all kinds of things going on. And maybe there'll be some really great ways to teach a private lesson over the computer that are better than now and things like that. But I want us to go, oh yeah, I really miss listening to the American band at that outdoor concert or something like that. That's exciting to me. So I think that'll happen to some degree. I mean, bookstores have come back. LP records have come back because they sound more vibrant and written. You can get to hold something, you know. So I have hope that we can have both. We can have great technology and have this human aspect that we don't lose, you know, just like in Star Trek or something.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you, Zach.
Before we go, where can people find you and find some of your ensembles?
Well, they all have, most of American Band and Ocean State Pops Orchestra both have websites. That are, if you just write out the name, they'll pop up. Otherwise, you can just email me, I guess, bcardany@uri.edu work, and I can be happy to help anyone find a concert or anything else about what I do.
Excellent. Yes, we will put those links in the post. So
that'd be great.
Yeah, please check out if you are from the area. When this is all over, please go check out the American Band, check out the Ocean State Pops Orchestra, check out the South County Chamber Orchestra. And for more on what we do, go to www.rirecording.org. And for myself, www.zjfmusic.com. Till next time, thank you to Brian. Thank you for listening. And stay safe, stay healthy, and please stay home. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Zach.